In today's Mother's Day edition of the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast, I'll be sharing with you a finished blanket for a very special someone. I also have 2 works in progress that are part of the Wool Needles Hands Something Old, Something New make-along that I can't wait to share with you. And I know a lot of you are wondering what I was going to do with the fabric from my grandma's old sewing tote. Well, I have something that I've done for now that I think is going to be really nice to hang on the wall behind me. So grab a cup of something cozy and let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. My name is Tayler, and I will be your host. Happy Sunday, everyone, and happy Mother's Day to all of you mothers out there. I am actually recording this on Saturday, so when you are watching this, it will be Mother's Day for you and for me as well, and I'll be spending that time with my family, and I look very forward to it. So I hope you have a lovely Sunday, and if you're not celebrating Mother's Day, happy Sunday. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. It's so nice to have you here to share in what I've been up to since we spoke last week. Now, I do have some things I want to catch you guys up on. I have a finished object, a couple of works in progress. I also want to dive into some of the works in progress coming out of the 2 make-alongs we have going on over here at the Wool Needles Hands YouTube channel. And all of that will come towards the end of the episode. But before we get into any of that, I have a few administrative things I want to cover. First, Fiber for the People, my hand-dyed yarn business, had a shop update this morning at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. If you head over there, you can see what's left and available in the shop. It is all sock sets this time around, and all of the colorways are inspired by the portraits of Frida Kahlo. So definitely head over to fiberforthepeople.com and see what's available. Also, I wanted to let you know that the new multi-craft jewel t-shirts are available in the Wool Needles Hands merch shop. That's what I'm wearing here today. They're available in really beautiful colors, a range of unisex sizes, and I absolutely love the shirt. I'm looking at it right now. It fits really well on my rather broad shoulders. It's I've washed mine since receiving it, which I recommend doing when you receive it. Just give it a wash, freshen it up a little bit, and it doesn't have any shrinkage. It's really just a fantastic quality shirt. So definitely head over to the merch shop. You can find the multi-craft jewel shirt there, but you can also find lots of other conversation starters, and it's a fantastic way to support the work that I'm doing here at the Wool Needles Hands channel. All right, let's dive right in, and I'm really excited to share with you guys my first finished object in quite some time. And this one has been ready and waiting to be finished. I've been taking my sweet time working on it since I last talked about it on the podcast. And this is a special blanket that I'm knitting for a very dear friend of mine who had a baby in April. This is kind of like a nursery blanket to put over the back of the rocking chair, just a really nice piece to have in the nursery to dress it up a little. And it is in the colors that she chose for the baby's room. So this is the Winter Cuddler blanket by Mama in a Stitch, or Jessica Potaz. It's not a baby blanket. I mean, the pattern is not intended to be a baby blanket, but I just thought it would be a really nice blanket to have to kind of soften up the nursery, to hang it over a rocking chair, lay it on the floor for tummy time or something like that as the baby gets a little older. It's just really nice and cozy and scrumptious. I have not washed it or soaked it and blocked it yet, so some of the stitch like pattern here isn't really opened like it will be when it's been blocked, but I'm really happy with the way that it came out. Now, I knit this using Loops and Threads yarn from Michaels. It's a super bulky yarn. It's an 80% acrylic, 20% alpaca yarn. It's really very lovely. I love the color. I purchased the amount of yarn required in the pattern for the size that I was knitting, but I did not have enough to finish it. And it was by the skin of my teeth that I managed to finish this. I was playing a pretty fierce game of yarn chicken, and that is partly why you see the tassels on the corner. So I'll explain that in just a second, but I'm gonna stand up. I don't even know if it matters for me to stand up and show this to you, but I just wanted to kind of lay it over the chair so you can see what we're working with here. So here's the blanket. It's got these really pretty little tassels on the end here. I don't know if you can really, I don't even know if this matters. It's super pretty. It's just the right size for hanging over a chair. I love the stitch pattern. It's just kind of like a hodgepodge of really fun stitches. Just a real like cozy, rustic blanket. And I love it. And I'm so happy to have it finished. So I had intended to give this to my friend May when her baby was born as like a gift for the baby. Now, we had already gotten them baby gifts, so that wasn't really like my only gift for her. It was just something that I wanted to do for her, to have kind of like some kind of heirloom piece to celebrate, this like new baby and this new journey through motherhood. She already has 2 little boys, but it's just, I wanted to have something that she can kind of use to celebrate that. That would be more for her than for the baby. Just kind of like a cozy, like little extra in the baby room that's there to kind of provide her with like coziness and warmth. And it's going to be perfect for when the weather cools down again, next season. Because obviously as we move into summer, this is just going to be too hot. But it is a really nice, just a really nice piece to have in the baby room. Okay, so like I said, I had to play a pretty fierce game of yarn chicken. And it was to the point where I had to cut the blanket just a little bit short to have enough yarn to bind off. So this last little section of garter right here is slightly more narrow than the initial section because I just wouldn't have had enough yarn for it. And then even after, so I got to a point where I figured I could just bind off the stitches and I would be fine. And I was able to bind off the stitches to right here. And then once I got here, I had nothing left to finish off this last little corner. And so what I did was I grabbed out this little cake of super bulky yarn. This is Fiber for the People yarn in the Cactus Flower colorway. It's roughly the same weight as the yarn that I'm using here, but it is not the same fiber content. This is 100% untreated Peruvian wool, which complicates things a little bit for some reasons I'll talk about in a second, but it was the closest thing I could find because I was not about to buy a whole nother ball of yarn for this section to be bound off. And so I had to improvise. And so it's a little messy in that top corner. I don't know if you can make that out. It's just a little messy right there, and the color changes right here. So I thought what I would do to disguise that color change is add some colorful tassels to the corners of the blanket, which I really kind of like. I think it just adds a little bit of a, like an eclectic rusticness. I'm not really sure. It's just really pretty. But the thing about that is that these tassels are not washable. So, they're not dryable. And I don't even know. I don't know how they would even hold up to like just being washed in the washing machine. I have a feeling if you washed this whole blanket on like the gentle cycle and then you hung it out to dry, it would be fine. I'm not 100% sure. So I am going to have to let her know that to be careful washing it. She lives right across the street from me. So I'm almost at the point where it's like, if you have to wash it, just bring it to me and I'll wash it for you. It's no big deal. But I don't really think it's going to be too much of an issue. We shall see. Worst case scenario, I just take these tassels off, and you can let me know what you think. The tassels are not a deal breaker. Like if I took the tassel off here and just left it, you would hardly notice the color shift where I had to change yarns. And then if it did get felted in that one corner, it almost would work to reinforce, where I had to add that yarn. So it's really no big deal. So I don't know. What do you think I should do? Should I just take off the tassels, give the blanket to her without the tassels so everything is, essentially washable? Or should I keep the tassels? Are they cute? And then just advise her to, wash it and then hang it to dry. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. It's definitely something I can fudge. I plan on giving this to her on Monday as like a Mother's Day gift, which I think is really appropriate. I almost think that that's better than having given it to her after the baby was born because, I don't know, it's more for her anyway. So that is my finished Winter Cuddler. I know some of you guys were wondering about it. Well, here it is, and I'm happy that it is finished. It was a lot of fun to work on. However, it did become a little bit, cumbersome, the last several weeks as the temperatures started to warm up. The little alpaca fibers shed on me a little bit. So, okay. I don't know. I need to give it a good wash and block and get it all stretched out and size, like shape it all so it's nice and square, and then it'll be completely finished. But I feel so relieved to have it off the needles because I feel like having that on the needles in its project bag just kind of looming over me has been one of those things that have made like working on other projects seem kind of frivolous and maybe a little bit more daunting. So having that off the needles is good. It just wipes that part of my slate clean, and I'm very happy with it. But I would like to know your thoughts on what I should do with those tassels. Okay, let's move on to my works in progress. Now, the only works in progress I'm going to share with you today are the two that I'm working on for the make-along that we have right now called the Something Old, Something New Make-Along. If you want to know about this make-along, I highly suggest you watch the last podcast episode, not the second to last video that I just uploaded on Wednesday, but the one I uploaded on Sunday, which is Knitting Podcast Day. Watch that. I talk all about the make-along over there. You can get involved. It's a month-long make-along. It ends on June 7th. So you want to really jump in if you want to get involved in this make-along. It's going to be pretty quick. But that's what these works in progress are kind of for right now. And I'm really excited to share them with you. Okay, actually, that brings me first to my grandma's sewing tote. Okay, so if you watched the last episode of the podcast, I shared with you that I was going to be repurposing these wooden handles from my grandma's sewing tote. Turns out that sewing tote is at least 90 years old. I had estimated that it was somewhere around 70 years old, and my dad let me know that he's like, no, it's more like around 90 years old at least, which is really cool. So these handles are from that tote. I'm repurposing these handles for the make-along. I'm knitting a bag that I am going to attach to the handles to kind of create the tote for this. Now, the fabric from the original bag, and I'll pop pictures up so you can see the bag that I'm talking about here, but the fabric from that bag, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, and I can't remember if I included it in the podcast episode, but I had a whole waffle session about just not wanting to get rid of it, and then I developed kind of a sentimental attachment to things like that, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it. And a lot of you got in touch saying find a way to save it. Maybe you can use it as the lining of your new bag, or essentially the consensus was find a way to save it. And I appreciate that because that was really what I was planning on doing. I was absolutely not going to discard it, throw it away, or anything like that. But I wasn't really exactly sure how I was going to use it. But what I decided to do, now this is kind of, I don't want to say it's a quick fix, but it's something that I think is going to work for me for right now as a way to kind of preserve the fabric from the bag and also kind of honor my grandma and showcase it in my craft office space here. So behind me, you see lots of wall art. It's like a big gallery of wall art behind me. And I was thinking it would be kind of cool, and some of you suggested this as well, to frame it somehow in a frame or a shadow box situation and feature it on the wall behind me. Well, that is kind of where I'm at with it right now. Now, this is just a quick way to do that. I purchased a frame that I think would work. It's not a very big frame. It could be bigger to facilitate the size of the bag. There's still some cardboard on here. But I didn't want it to be too big because I wanted it to fit on that back wall. So this is what I have so far. And it makes me think of those museums that you go to where they frame a piece of fabric from an ancient garment, and it's just framed behind glass against matte board, and it's kind of flattened under the glass. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this, and I really dig it. But here is that fabric from my grandma's bag, so it's reflecting my lights. Let's see if I can do this where you're not getting this really bad glare. I mean, you can kind of figure out what's going on here. So this is my grandma's bag. The fabric is behind the glass here, and it's being pressed against that mat board. And I love this. I actually really think this is super cool because it looks like something is being preserved that is really important. And it is. This is important to me. It's very old. It represents my grandma, who is a wonderful lady, and I love spending time with her. And I can save this and I can hang it on the wall behind me, and we moving forward here will just know where this started, what the origin of this piece of artwork that's going to go on that wall will have been. And that really means a lot to me. And it means a lot to me that y'all cared enough to make suggestions about how I could save this and preserve this. That means more to me than you realize. And so this is kind of a cool way that I think is going to work for now to kind of preserve this. And if I can come up with some other way that I can add, annotations to this, get a larger frame or what have you, that can be something I do down the road. But I really wanted to come up with something pretty quickly so that I didn't just toss this fabric into a basket as I'm going to get to it later. I wanted to get to it right away, put it up on the wall, and just have it be there and preserved and hanging there to honor my grandma. The only thing I would do maybe differently if I and it wouldn't be too hard to do that, is this white matting in the background. Maybe getting something that's quite not as, something that's not quite as bright white. Maybe something that's a little less bright white. I don't know, it just gives off a really bright, papery white background. Something a little bit more subtle than that, maybe a little bit more earthy. But other than that, I love this. I'm not sure where I'm going to put this. I kind of was thinking, let's see. Okay, so my son did this, and I don't really want to take this down. I don't want to put it here because I need this big piece right here. I'm just not sure. Maybe like this I could move. Yeah, I don't really know. But it's going to go somewhere. I'm going to leave it right here for right now. But it is going to go somewhere on my wall. And I'm so happy about it because, I don't know, I just get happy looking back at it and knowing that it's there. And it's going to be on the wall and celebrated. And that's really special. Okay, so what I am doing now, since that part of the bag has been removed from these handles, I am knitting the replacement. And I'm kind of taking my time with this to make sure that I get it right because I'm sort of improvising this bag section as I go. Now, here is what I have so far. I'm going to hold it upside down. It kind of makes it easier for me to show the shape. So this is the bag that I have worked up so far, and I am working flaps. So I don't know how I'm going to be able to explain this all that easily, but do you see this section is longer right here, and then this section is being held on a needle right now, and I'm working just this flap. And the reason why is, and this is the same way that that bag was constructed as well, but because these are very rigid handles, and when you attach it to the bag, they close like this. When you open these, you have to have flaps to open, otherwise you're not going to get the bag to open enough because these aren't going to bend. So you need some flaps that you can open the bag this way, and that's why I'm knitting flaps right now for the top of the bag. So that's what we have at this point. This one that I'm working here is one flap, and when I get this to the proper length, I'll flip over and I'll start the next flap. And as I'm working the flap, I'm kind of narrowing it in so that it can fit within the slot or through the slot of the handle. I feel like that's kind of very complicated. It's complicated for me to explain, and so one of my plans is to get this to the point that I need it so I can slip the fabric through that slot and then not go any further, so that here on the podcast I can almost like demonstrate that for you, or maybe film it and then plug it here into the podcast so that you can see what I mean by, like feeding it through the slot. It just, I want to be able to show you what I mean. And you probably already understand what I'm talking about, but for whatever reason, it's hard for me to explain. And if it's hard for me to explain, I worry that it's being lost. But that's just where I'm at right now. So I'm knitting the flap. I'm going to knit this long enough so that it can double over, feed through the slot on the handle, and then be tacked down on the other side. And then I will do the same thing on this side, and we'll have a cute little tote bag. So it's going to look kind of like, so it's going to look like that. Obviously better than that, but somewhat like this. How cute. So cute. It'll have the flap and all of these things, and I love it. So that is where I'm at with this right now. I am knitting this using True Boo by Lion Brand in an assortment of colors. I'll pop a picture up so you can see all the different colors, but this is a 100% bamboo rayon yarn from Lion Brand. It's a sport weight yarn, and I am pairing it with this yarn that is, I want to say this is a 95% cotton and 5% nylon yarn that I harvested from an old sweater that I picked up at a thrift store. And I love it. I love pairing these two together. I think it gives it a really cool kind of like tweedy marled look. This is the color I'm working on right now. But these two together are just making such a gorgeous fabric. I mean, look at that fabric. This would be fun just in like a summery top. It's very drapey. I mean, super, super drapey and weighty. I don't know, does this demonstrate drapiness to you? I don't know, but I love it. So that is my tote bag progress for my grandma's tote bag handles. The handles are my repurposed element for this make-along, because that is an important aspect of the make-along, is that you have to incorporate a repurposed element. I already had a repurposed element in that harvested yarn. That counts as well. But this was kind of the inspiration for the project. And I'm keeping these in my project bag so that I can use it to kind of measure up that flap that I'm working on. Okay, in addition to that, I am also working on another tote bag. And I'm using that same harvested yarn from that sweater that I was using there. But this time I am using some vintage yarn that I purchased. I'll tell you what, I'm going to leave that vintage yarn in that bag because I have a fresh ball over there to show you because it's starting to come unraveled. This is going to be an Eileen bag. Okay, so in my stash, I remembered I had this yarn. This is called Frilly by Cessia. It's an Italian yarn. It's a viscose cotton blend with a little bit of nylon. And I want to say it's like a sport weight yarn. I'm pairing this with that same sweater, harvested sweater yarn, which is here, to create an Eileen bag, which is a really gorgeous market bag by Hannah Mason. And this is what I have so far. And I am obsessed with this fabric. Okay, I want to get in really close, so just get ready for it. Here it comes. Look how fun that fabric is. Oh man. Fun. It has like a newsprint look to it, but it's really cool. The blue yarn has all of these little pops of color within the ball. And then when it's paired with that really lovely brown or tan color, it just kind of mutes it down, neutralizes it a little bit, but gives it that really fun kind of newsprint look. How cool is that? So this is where I am with my Eileen bag. Not a ton of progress. Well, no, actually, this is, I didn't have any of this done last time we spoke, so this is pretty good since we last spoke. Now, I am knitting this bag using 2 separate needles because, as you can see here, it has somewhat of a rounded rectangular shape, and it was really hard for me to fit all of these stitches even around a 40-inch circular needle without it feeling tight. And so I'm just knitting like this section on one circular needle and this section on another circular needle, and it's working out just fine. Yeah, so I'm loving that. So that is my Eileen bag. I love the stitch pattern on this. Why? I don't need to be so close. Jeez, back off. It's really fun. And this is a really fun one to work on. The stitch pattern here is super, intuitive. It's just yarn overs and knit 2 together. It's nothing major. If you want to make a market bag, like a very classic market bag, and you want to knit that bag, you don't want to crochet it, this is honestly the way to go. Look no further because it's just such a great bag. And when I get to the handle, you'll see just how fantastic the handle is on this thing. It's sturdy, and it has it's knit with like an I-cord type. It's like a seamless edge. It's just such a great bag. I love it so much. It's called the Eileen bag by Hannah Mason. I'm knitting mine with repurposed yarn and vintage yarn that I picked up on a kind of like a vintage craft supply Etsy shop, and I'll link to that down below. It's a fantastic way to get, inexpensive, unique, fun yarn that you really can't find anywhere else. So that is another kind of submission for the Something Old, Something New make-along. Both of these are something, this yarn I determined was from 1973, a little bit like around there. And then, so that's, something old. And then that repurposed yarn, that harvested yarn is something repurposed. It's just very cool. It's very cool, you guys. It's very, repurposey, sustainable, perfect for this make-along, and I'm really happy I'm making it. Now, before I move on, I want to share with you guys some of the works in progress coming out of that particular make-along, because I have been so inspired by seeing your guys' makes for that make-along. Some of you guys have found yarn from a long time ago, like in attic boxes, or you're spinning some yarn from really old fiber you've had in your stash. It's just really cool to see what you guys are making. Now, again, if you want to know how to get involved in this, definitely watch that previous podcast episode. But in the meantime, let me share with you some of the works in progress that are coming out of the Wool Needles Hands Something Old, Something New make-along. such great things, so inspiring. I love seeing your guys' makes, especially all the Eileen bags that are being made right now. That's really inspiring. I like seeing yours and working on mine. It's such a great pattern. So thank you to everyone who has joined and everyone who will join. Definitely share your work using that hashtag something old, something new. If you're not on social media, that is just fine. If you would like to share your works in progress, just email them to me. And in the subject line, use that hashtag. Send it to me at woolneedleshands@gmail.com. All finished objects for this particular make along will be sent to me via email at woolneedleshands@gmail.com. But like I said, if you're not on social media, you can just send me your works in progress photos and I can share them here on the podcast. Well, that is it for me today, guys. I know it's a rather short episode, but I am going to get going because I have a shop update to plan, Mother's Day to celebrate, and I hope you guys are all doing the same thing. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend your time here with me today. If you took value or enjoyed yourself at all during this video, please don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. It helps much more than you realize. And while you're at it, subscribe and click that bell icon so you can be notified anytime I upload new content here on the channel, which is every Sunday and every Wednesday. And don't forget to head over to the merch shop where you can help support the Wool Needles Hands channel by picking up some fun merch, whether it's a coffee mug, a tote bag, or a fun t-shirt. It all helps and is so greatly appreciated. Until the next time we meet for Wednesday's episode of the Midweek Ramble, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is that you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye. What is this blanket? What is this blanket called? It's been so long I can't even remember what it's called. Look at those lights. Let's bring it back. What is even... All right. Whatever, who cares?